Knowing when you should stand your ground and when you should back up off the kitchen line is often a very misunderstood concept, but one that could easily save your team a whole lot of unnecessary lost points. When we think about transitioning from offense to defense, there are various moments that should trigger that mind shift, and today's drill builds on that, giving you the tools to implement effective defensive positioning and shot selection. You'll need 3 players, paddles, and a handful of balls. 3 players are required for the first progression. Player A and B engage in a cross-court dink rally, while the focus player, player C, is opposite the single player. The objective is for player C to actively read their partner's shot and adjust their depth based on whether they feel their team is on the offense, neutral, or defense. To begin with, the rules are simple. Player B will alternate between giving player A forehand and backhand dinks. Every time player A is given a forehand, player C does a backward split step and prepares for an attack by tucking the paddle closer to their body and presenting the backhand side. Regardless of what the contact height is, player A must play an attacking ball to player C, who will block volley the ball back into the kitchen to restart the cross-court dink rally. We've all played against uber-aggressive players who tend to be trigger-happy whenever the ball is on their forehand side. It's important that an opposing player gives themselves adequate time to react to these attacks by backing up off the line. Remember, if it turns out to be a dink, then there's plenty of time to move forward for it. Now that you're in a good rhythm with the drill, but before your legs get too tired, it's time to test your ability to read your partner's shot direction. Player B may now choose to dink to either player A's forehand or backhand, and player C needs to only move back off the line when they believe it will be taken as a forehand, but hold their ground when it goes to the backhand. Once again, play the block volley dink back into the kitchen to reset the point. Obviously, in a real situation, some players are equally likely to attack off the backhand side, but for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to use the most common weapon to groove in good defensive movement. Now all bets are off, and player B has the right to play all manner of dinks to player A. Player C now has to read not just the direction of the dink, but also whether it has been hit with too much power or height. Player A can and should attack anything they believe is worthy. To level the playing field, player C has the right to counterpunch the attack and should look to do so every time the ball is high enough. Getting the most out of this drill relies heavily on effective block volleying. So if you haven't done so already, please check out our video on that. When you're doing the first progression, experiment with the right amount of distance to back up off the line to avoid being caught in motion while your opponent is attacking. You're looking for just enough to give you time to react, but not enough to give your opponent aggressive angles to use against you. As the drill gets more difficult, you'll need to read the play earlier, which means not just watching your opponent, but watching the ball off your partner's paddle. This will give you the first-hand information you'll need to decide to back up or hold your ground. The idea of backing up off the line is certainly not cut and dry, and there's always going to be situations where you can afford to hold your ground. However, if your opponents are aggressive or deceptive attackers and have a hand speed advantage, then knowing how and when to effectively defend yourself can be your one and only chance to neutralize this style of play. Use this drill and then try your best to implement the strategy the next time you're playing some games. I want to know how it goes for you, so email us at info@CoachMePickleball.com. But one that could easily save your points a team a thing. Yes, I just threw that in there, didn't I? Is often a very misunderstood concept, but one that could... It's time to test your ability to accurately detect your shot. She's in my head now. At any moment, I'm just expecting her to shriek. Test your ability to read. Read. I should be able to read. So if you haven't done so already, probably don't need to say pickleball. I think they've got a good idea that that's what we're doing here.